In this video, I will review the N1201SA Vector Impedance Analyzer, or Antenna Analyzer, that I bought from banggood.com. You can get the link in the description below. I'll go over its basic operation, compare it to my rigexpert 600, and show you why you must have something to test antennas before hooking them to your equipment, and why you should check your antennas regularly. I bought this because I couldn't justify the expense of a brand name antenna analyzer for my use. If you've ever looked at these, you'll know they're quite expensive. I wanted to start building better antennas for my FPV equipment at 1.2 GHz, and I also wanted something that would cover Wi-Fi bands. The basic model does from 137 MHz to 2.7 GHz, which will do all the bands I wanted nicely. When I bought it, it cost less than the rigexpert 600, which is only good up to 600 MHz. The controls are intuitive, and making measurements is quite easy, despite the lack of a number pad, which is my only complaint about the interface. And despite the minimal buttons, it isn't hard to use. There is a built-in battery charger powered by the mini USB port. I used a 2-amp 5-volt wall adapter to charge it for the first time. It took a couple of hours, and the red light went out after it was fully charged. The color screen is bright, and it was easy to read even outdoors. The settings screen has only one user-changeable setting, the auto-off time. I noticed over 10 minutes of using it that the charge indicator was at 92%, so it should last for a while. Compared to some of the homebrew options I was considering, this is good value for money. If you're new to testing and building antennas, there are just a few simple measurements that are really important. VSWR, which stands for Voltage Standing Wave Ratio. This is a measure of how efficient your antenna is at radiating the energy sent to it. A perfect antenna, one that radiates all the energy sent to it, has a VSWR of 1. A good antenna is in the range of 1.2 to 1.7, and for antennas that do things like circular polarization or whips with outer counterpoise, you can get into the 2 range. As the VSWR number increases, the amount of energy reflected back into your transmitter increases, and the transmission loss also increases, meaning less energy into the air. There are many tables and articles you can read by ham radio operators to get into the minutiae of this topic. For the frequencies and power levels commonly used in RC planes and FPV, you want to shoot for the lowest number possible. Anything less than a VSWR of 2 should be good enough to not destroy your equipment. Another important measurement is resistance. Since most coax cable and video equipment is designed for 50 ohms, this is the number to shoot for. If the antenna is not the same as the cable, then some loss will occur where resistance changes. Resistance of an antenna will change depending on the frequency it's being used for. This is largely because of other numbers like reactance and impedance. So if you're just starting out, you can use resistance and VSWR to determine if an antenna will be good or not, and not get into the other numbers until you've learned more. I will note that if an antenna is for receive and not transmit, the exact same measurements reflect how well the antenna will collect and pass that energy to the receiver, so the same principles apply. Also, antennas are very sensitive to the location they're being used. For example, I tested an antenna inside my garage and got a very different number than when I was outside away from the house. Antennas should always be tested in the environment they are going to be used in, or something as close as possible. To measure the VSWR and resistance on any antenna, it's easiest to go to the graph plot to characterize the antenna over a small range of frequencies around what you think it will be designed for. A typical antenna will produce a sharp dip in VSWR at the frequency it will be good at. Remember, 1 is a perfect antenna. On the N1201SA, there are 2 measurement screens. To switch between them, use the M key. Once on the plot screen, set the desired stop and start frequencies. By using the cursor keys or rotary switch to move between fields, it will turn red so you know which one you've highlighted. You can click the rotary switch or push the power button to select the highlighted field, then use cursor keys to change which digit is being changed by the rotary switch inside the field. Once you've set the frequency you want, click the rotary switch or press the enter key to exit the edit mode. You can then change between fields again. Be sure to select VSWR in the top left corner. The plot should now show a sharp dip in VSWR. If it does not, expand the range of the plot until you see one. If you don't see one, then either your antenna is best for a frequency outside the range of your analyzer, or something else is wrong, like a broken connection or a short. More on that later. Select the mark field and move the cursor to the lowest point on the dip to see what frequency the antenna has the lowest VSWR. Note that the values of these plots can change depending on how wide a range you are testing. I try to closely bracket the usable frequency of an antenna once I've found it. On the rigexpert, it is the same process. However, there are different menu screens to set the parameters before entering the plot screen. I get a number that is very close on both devices. I measured a few more antennas that I built for 433 or 440 MHz, which I use for ham or long-range radio control. And the N1201SA gives very similar numbers to the rigexpert. In my opinion, the most useful measurement is the VSWR plot, and that shows you what frequencies an antenna will be generally good for. The wider the trough at the bottom of the dip, the wider the frequency range of the antenna. If the frequency is known, and we want to see how an antenna will perform on that frequency, the detailed measurement screen is more useful. Press M to switch to the other screen, and then enter the frequency. Based on my short experience with the analyzer, so far the N1201SA works quite well, and I've been using it to test all of my antennas. I've been building a lot of antennas recently for my new plane, and may make a video about how to build and test them. If that interests you, let me know in the comments. Now I will show you why having something to test antennas is so important. I've been using this dipole for over a year now, sometimes on my scanner and my MTD, and there'll be a link to this in the description below, and other times I've used it on the ground with a transmitter. It was the first antenna I tested since I know it works and I've tested it with the rigexpert before, but I got a flat plot with a VSWR of about 10. On closer inspection, I found that the solder joint on the jacket and collar had broken, and it was only if it was on a bit of an angle that I would get a connection from the ground plane. This could be the difference between signal or no signal, or worse yet, a blown transmitter. I will make it a habit to check my antennas regularly. All the vibrations and landings are obviously hard on equipment, and it will be sad to lose a plane or transmitter because of a faulty connection. That's it for this one. Be sure to check out some of my other videos where I put these antennas to good use.